Why is this up here? I'm only short.
I forgot.
Yeah. Test, 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 test. Okay. Good afternoon. Whoa. The microphone works. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on one of the most popular events at SCANS. We're here in the sanctuary instead of downstairs in Hope Hall because recently we've had fabulous turnout that led to overcrowding. So what you're seeing here is actually 170 chairs rather than the usual 100 chairs downstairs. This space is larger and the chairs are more comfortable, aren't they? Yes. At the end of this session, we're going to ask for your feedback, and I'll explain how to do that then. First, there's a couple of normal housekeeping items. The fire exits. They are behind me, one on each side, and they are behind you, one on each side. Go out the main door and turn either left or right to go out onto the street. The washrooms are through this door. There's a little hallway, and it's the first door on your right. Also, you've turned off your phones, right? This information session is an opportunity for instructors to showcase their courses for the spring term. In order to keep the session a reasonable length and to help you beat our notorious Halifax afternoon traffic, we've changed things up a bit. Rather than reading out each instructor's extensive resume, and they are extensive, we've posted them to the front page of our website where you can read them at your leisure. This allows a full 5 minutes, for instructors to convince us to take your course. In the past, we had a break in the middle of the session, but this time around, we're going to have refreshments at the end instead, downstairs. And you don't want to be between us and our refreshments. To begin, I call on John Rubidoux to give our land acknowledgement, and then Kit Waters will introduce the HRM Faculty Committee.
Thank you, Sharon. Welcome, everybody. Isn't this exciting? Holy cow. Okay, I'm going to do the land acknowledgement. Here at Seniors College Association of Nova Scotia, we acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is protected by the treaties of peace and friendship that did not surrender Indigenous land, resources, or sovereignty, but instead established rules for an ongoing relationship between nations. Further, we recognize and commit to addressing the need for continual engagement and learning in the spirit of peace and friendship and in the work of truth and reconciliation. Mset Nogama means all my relations, and this is not just relations between me and my family, but it's also the relationship between the air we breathe and the water we drink and the land we use and misuse all the time. And thank you very much, and welcome. I introduce Kit Waters, one of the best volunteers in this organization. Oh, no.
I'd like to welcome everyone on behalf of the HRM Faculty Committee. We have the best volunteer assignment in the SCANS organization, designing the course curriculum. We are privileged to meet with prospective lecturers to convince them of the merit of teaching a SCANS course. It's not really much of a hard sell. They know that our members are engaged and open to acquiring new knowledge. They're not there to build university credits, and they're not on their electronic devices during classes. I would like to introduce the amazing dedicated members of our committee. And they don't want to stand because they're shy and they don't like receiving any kind of acknowledgement. But I want them to because they are so hardworking. We'll have Carol McCaskill stand up. Linda McIntyre. Woohoo! Marlene McClellan. Where are you, Marlene? So there she is. And Susan Hutchinson is not able to be with us today. She is traveling. But she's with us in spirit, I know that. This committee puts in so many hours to find an appropriate assortment of courses that will appeal to the wide variety of interests that our SCANS members have. And so if you look through the syllabus that we have for the upcoming term, I hope you will agree that we have managed to do a pretty good job in getting a number of courses that would appeal to just about anybody's interest. And finally, thank you to our wonderful instructors. There really are no words to express our gratitude. We are humbled by your willingness to captivate, excite, educate, and entertain us. Thank you. And now I'd like to call on Ian McVicker, who is first up. Woo! Ian.
Good afternoon, all. Bonjour à tous. Feskerma Ahuladunya. So we got English, French, and Scots Gaelic to start. And I'm going to be very brief. I have 3 slides. And I'm going to start, if you could bring up the next slide, Bill. We have a special guest, and he is going to tell us why you should enroll in my course. Hit it, Bill.
We are announcing a series of transformative initiatives that will help unlock the full potential of this vast region. We're moving forward with an ambitious new plan, backed by more than $40 billion of investments in Canada's North and Arctic. Investments to defend our sovereignty and to deter new threats. Investments to connect, build, and transform Northern and Arctic communities. With this plan, we are taking control of our future. We will no longer rely on others to defend our Arctic security or to fuel our economy. We are building 4 new northern operational support hubs and nodes in Whitehorse, in Resolute Bay, in Rankin Inlet, and in Cambridge Bay. And we are upgrading our national defense infrastructure in Yellowknife, Inuvik, Iqaluit, and Goose Bay. These defense investments will strengthen our military's presence, and at the same time, what they will require is new energy infrastructure, new broadband, new telecommunication services, new wastewater services. What that means is as we build these military operations, we can transform and benefit the surrounding communities. The combination of these defense investments with the nation-building projects we're announcing today will strengthen Arctic security and open new economic opportunities while connecting communities.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Next slide, please. Okay, there's the scope of the course. It's like everything he said, but on an international scale. So he's described what the course is about, but I'm going to take this and I'm going to talk about the 6 Arctic nations north of 60. Next slide, please. And going chronologically, top, left to right, middle, left to right, bottom, left to right, we're going to look at the history of Indigenous people north of 60. We're going to concentrate on the Canadian Inuit. We're going to compare where they were pre-European contact, the colonial period, and where they are today. So you can see in the second picture, there's a couple of Inuit ladies who were at the Juno Awards. And if you look at the third picture, that is from the Arctic Winter Games, which are just concluding. The fourth one on the right is mineral deposits across Canada, particularly the Canadian North. And as Mr. Carney alluded to, we have to build civilian infrastructure to allow us to gain access to those minerals, to exploit them, and to use them. So that is a look. The middle slide left is Wab Kinew talking about the importance of having a port at Port Churchill on Hudson Bay. I'm going to talk about our defense policy, our North strong and free. I'm going to touch on Prime Minister Carney's speech this year at Davos, which I'm sure you heard when he said there's been a rupture in international relations and we're no longer under the old international order. I'm going to talk about how that works out in practical terms, looking at Canadian Forces deployments north, which this year have been considerable. Also, the role of the Canadian Rangers, the lady in the bottom left. Threats to the Canadian North, if you look at that picture of that orange fellow with the American flag. Moving over to the Scandinavian countries, I'm going to talk about the emerging Nordic culture and identity. And I'm going to finish off looking at Inuit and Northern peoples' growing sense of identity. There's going to be an Inuit-based university. So that pretty much covers it, A to Z, and I look forward to seeing you in my class. Merci beaucoup.
Hello. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. In his absence, he's traveling and not able to be with us today, but he has shared some slides with us to describe his course, and I have a few details here. First one up, the title itself is intriguing. I have to say that Sylvain is backed by popular demand. He's delivered a course for us before and was so popular, and of course the timeliness of his information is really quite remarkable. So he's talking the course title, Beyond the Checkout, How Trade Tensions and Consumer Shifts Are Rewriting Canada's Food Economy. Next slide. Sylvain is known as the food professor. He's a professor in food distribution and policy in the Faculty of Management at Dalhousie. And he sent us a very short video clip which describes his presentation.
Hey, food professor here, Sylvain Charlebois from Dalhousie University. Welcome to my course. This is my second time at SCAN. Looking forward to it. My class is really about everything affecting food prices, affecting food quality, variety, everything you see at the grocery store. We're trying to make sense of our retail landscape, and also at the restaurant, what you're seeing. There's lots to uncover, lots of things you don't see as a consumer that we try to explain. Policy, strategy, the good, the bad, and of course the ugly. And we can't avoid talking or not talking about politics and geopolitics, especially right now. There's lots going on. So we'll try to unpack all of these complex things during our class together. Stay tuned.
As extreme weather, global trade tensions, and an aging population place new pressures on how food is grown and delivered, Canada's long-standing role as one of the world's most dependable food producers is facing important challenges. So I encourage you to look at in detail. There you go. He describes that quite succinctly. Discover how climate risks, global trade tensions, and shifting demographics are reshaping Canada's food future and what it means for your plate and your food dollar. Thank you.
I'm completely non-technical, no videos, no slides, no nothing. I'm Liz Crocker, and I'm going to be teaching how books can change your life. Some of you know this little story that books changed my life, have changed my life in many, many ways, but one of the ways was I got my first job out of university because I said I like to read and write. It was a time in Ontario where people were desperate for teachers, and you could, if you could get a contract with the school board, then you could get into 2 months of teacher training. So I called a principal on an army base in Ontario, and I said, I see you have a job posting for teaching English. And he said, yes. We chatted a bit. He asked what my degree was in, and I said, political science. And he said, well, why on earth do you think you can teach English? It's a fair question. But I said, because I like to read and write. And he said, it's the most honest answer I've had all day, and I got the job. So books are important. Why me, apart from the fact that I got an outrageous job at an outrageous time? I have books all over my house. I think they have babies at night. They seem to grow. I own a bookstore. I used to own another bookstore. I'm in 2 book clubs, and I love talking about books with people. It's just one of my favorite things to do. And I can point to so many books that have changed my life at a particular time, at a particular age, in a particular way. And just for fun, I brought a couple. I'm going to name the title, and if you want to find out why they changed my life, you have to come to the class. King of the Wind changed my life in grade 4. The Way of the Peaceful Warrior changed my life in my late 20s. Markings changed my life as a 17, 18-year-old. The Scalpel, the Sword, the story of Dr. Norman Bethune, changed my life in the early 70s. So, quite honestly, we're not going to just talk about me and the books that have changed my life. It will, if you take the class, it's very interactive. I want to know what books changed your life. I want you to bring in your favorite children's book, all that kind of stuff. And we will explore a variety of topics. We'll do deep dives into the worlds of children and young adult literature. We'll look at fiction, nonfiction, poetry. We'll look at award-winning books and banned books and who decides, other than Daniel Smith. And I have already invited some authors who will come to the class as well, who will talk about how books have changed their lives, not just from reading, but also from writing. And it's really fun to learn about an author's process. So if you're not already sold, I'm just going to leave you with a quote. I am a quote junkie, I will warn you in advance. But this one, I think, is germane to the topic. Most of what we've read has disappeared from memory. I mean, just me, you know. The book we're currently reading will, in a short time, vanish into a few images or ideas. But perhaps none of it really goes away. We forget the author, the plot, the characters, the factual details, but the essence remains somewhere in us, nourishing our minds like a mental fertilizer, making us a little cleverer, kinder, and more complicated than we would have been if left to our own devices. Thanks.
Well, good afternoon. It's good to see so many people here.
I'm just worried about this one.
Yeah. So I'll be talking about Cuba for just, I think it's 3 lectures. I'll be talking about Cuba. Obviously, Cuba has obviously been in the news. Many of us are transfixed by what's happening on the Persian Gulf, in the Middle East, or what should probably be called West Asia. And of course, Trump and Rubio have spoken about, and of course, we have Senator Lindsey Graham, who often gives unhinged comments, or it definitely is unhinged, who talks about Cuba being next, right? And so basically, as many of you know, the United States has imposed a fuel blockade on Cuba. No fuel is entering Cuba. It's unprecedented. It's clearly an attempt to starve the Cuban people into submission. To generate, one of the things we'll learn, we'll talk about in the course is why the United States has this sort of obsession with United States, with Cuba rather. Wayne Smith, who was the first U.S. diplomat to return to Cuba, returned under Jimmy Carter's administration in the 70s, often referred to Cuba as a full moon, having the impact, that same impact on the United States. The United States would go crazy, right? So one of the things we'll explore is place it in historical context of the history of Cuba and the United States even before the revolution, but also look at it specifically with a big focus on Cuba after the triumph of the revolution. Why has the United States been so determined and so completely incapable of understanding the Cuban aspirations for independence, sovereignty, and even to create a project of social justice? So we'll look at all of these different things as well, right? We'll also look at how this architecture of U.S. economic sanctions, which can only really be described as an economic war, really was constructed in the early 1960s. There's a very famous memorandum of April 6, 1960 by Lester Mallory, who was a very important person in the U.S. Department of State, and it's now a declassified memorandum where he acknowledges that the Cuban government has, overwhelming support, majority support, and the only way to bring it down is to impose what you would say a suffocating embargo on Cuba, to actually stop it from getting inputs from outside, and as he said, to ensure that we generate discontent, suffering, right, such that this will overthrow the revolution. There was, as some people know in the news, in the city of Moron, which is in the province of Ciego de Avila, which is in central Cuba, a peaceful protest, which the Cuban government has acknowledged is, legitimate and understandable given the shortages in Cuba, that turned violent with a small group of people. And of course, Trump then tweeted that, acknowledging this very clearly, that the blackouts, the shortages, right, are driving people to desperation, right? So what's unique about Trump is this hyper-escalation of the economic war, and specifically the open admission that the goal is to starve the Cuban people into submission, right? We have people, for example, in the U.S. Congress from Florida who speak openly about this. The goal is to wreak havoc, is to impose so much pain on the Cuban people, what we call collective punishment, that a revolution will collapse. And we see this articulated by Marco Rubio and others, right? So we'll explore, where does this hyperaggression come from? Is it solely rooted in what some people describe as the malign, malignant, narcissistic personality of Donald Trump and his ineptitude, or is it rooted in the fact that Cuba represents what some people have described, what was actually described during the Kennedy administration as the unforgivable revolution, right? Cuba as a challenge to U.S. hegemony in the region. We have the articulation of the national security strategy of 2025 by Donald Trump, his administration, perhaps the most heavily scrutinized, perused national security strategy ever produced by the United States. And it has consequences where they declared that the Americas, right, including Canada, is the United States preserve. And the United States will dictate who actually is in power. That's their goal, right? Some people saw this as an isolationist move, right? But when we see what's happened in the Persian Gulf, we can perhaps see it and view it. I'm actually giving a talk on Thursday at Dalhousie about this, perhaps as them trying to retrench what they see as their backyard, okay, the necessary area of domination in their drive to establish global dominance. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. It appears in the neocon documents of the early 2000s, and it's specifically articulated by the Trump administration. And Cuba has been the center focus of this, right? So one of the things we'll talk about is this historical relationship with the United States, to explain why, they have this historical enmity to Cuba, why Cuban Revolution is an anathema to them. We'll talk about why we had the Obama thaw, why Trump retreated from it, why we have this hyper-escalation. We'll also talk about what can be Canada's role in this, right? Can Canada play a particular role? Canada was the source of the largest number of tourists to Cuba and is the single largest foreign investor, with Sherritt International, Canadian company, being the largest foreign investor in Cuba. Why has Canada retreated? What are Canada's responsibilities? And why has there been a mass movement internationally, right, to challenge the U.S. economic war against Cuba? This week, arriving around March the 21st, is an international flotilla arriving in Cuba. And this is basically an attempt by a variety of people from across the world to challenge the U.S. economic war against Cuba and so forth. Within this discussion, when it's specifically about this war in Cuba, we can talk about, what has Cuba achieved in terms of its healthcare, its education, what Cuba has done internationally in terms of its medical internationalist missions, particularly its role in, which I've written on extensively, its role in the anti-colonial national liberation struggles in Africa, particularly in Southern Africa, particularly in the defeat of racist rule in South Africa, and why Fidel Castro was one of the first people that Nelson Mandela visited and thanked for this assistance, and he had this deep relationship with him as well. And perhaps we might talk about as well how within this economic crisis, Cuba is innovating. Even at this moment, Cuba has had a major move to solar generation, accelerating its plan to move to renewable energy and so on, in the face of this unrelenting assault from the United States and so forth. What do the current talks with the United States entail as well? And also, perhaps controversially, how Cuba is deepening popular participation in decision-making. So there's a lot to cover in 3 classes, but Cuba is now clearly at the center of many of the geopolitical news stories that we're seeing, and I look forward to talking to you about this topic and exchanging and discussions on this. Yeah. So, yeah. And as I said, it's good to see you all here. I hope everyone is well, as well as can be expected in this unsettling and increasingly frightening world. Thank you.
And I'm really glad the mic is almost low enough for me. It works really well. Okay,
yes.
I promise not to shout.
Are you going to tell them you're just back from New Zealand?
I flew
This
in.
is supreme dedication.
I flew in from New Zealand last night. So I'm quite pleased to be here today to talk about delivering my very first SCANS course. And I'm really impressed with these pictures. You have your picture introductory slide is way better than mine. So we'll just go right to the next slide, please. So in Nova Scotia, we have some of the highest rates of chronic disease in all of Canada. The statistics would say that in this room, between 60 to 80% of the people in this room right now live with not one, but 2 long-term chronic conditions. That's the fact. So long-term conditions are everything from diabetes, heart disease, COPD, osteoporosis. Even cancer is now considered a chronic disease. So living with a chronic disease is the new normal. Interestingly, we've only had research in this area for about 3 decades in the area of chronic disease management and self-management. And self-management refers to the work that people do to live with those chronic conditions. While those conditions are all very different from each other, it's interesting, the work of living with those conditions is pretty similar, regardless of the diagnosis. So if we move to the next slide, some of the earliest research was done in the 80s, and it was done by 2 people called Corbin and Strauss. They were the first ones to describe 3 types of work that everyone living with a chronic condition does, and they called it, and today we still call it, role, medical, and emotional management. So medical management, that's the stuff you probably know about. What do you do? How do you take your medications? What is the right kind of exercise you need to do? That's managing the condition. But there's 2 other types of work people do. One is called role management. That's how do you manage the impact of this on your everyday life? And that impact can be everything from having to give up a driver's license, impacts where you go, who you see, what you can do every day. The third type is emotional management, and it's really hidden. Most of us don't see this, but living with a chronic condition often comes with a sense of loss. Things like knowing that the future may not be the story that you once wrote, that perhaps you're not going to hold your grandchildren. There's a lot of loss and things, and that's also work, and it's the work that's very hidden. So there's these three types of work. That was in the 80s. So more than 3 decades later, we know a lot more about how people do this work. We know this work is also really critical to people's well-being, their quality of life, and how they use the healthcare services. And it even can affect the trajectory of their condition, what we as people ourselves do. So through lectures, discussions, workshops, I hope we can dive into some of this research and the strategies people use to self-manage. We'll explore concepts of self-efficacy or confidence and how that can change health outcomes. We'll examine how and why people make decisions and choices and how they manage everyday life. We'll also explore how the healthcare system does or does not support people living with chronic conditions, and how the system is trying to respond to this worldwide chronic disease epidemic. So I'm a researcher, so you can expect to hear what the research tells us, but I also know there'll be a wealth of experience, knowledge, and perspectives in the room. So I've planned lots of time for discussion, debate, and I hope some interesting activities. So please come, bring your knowledge, bring your expertise, and bring your curiosity so that we will have some fun in the class. So whether you live with a chronic condition yourself, or whether you really want to be a good friend or family member to someone who is living with a chronic condition, I hope you'll leave with some new perspectives and some new ideas on living with a chronic condition.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carlene Osborne, and I am here to help with the world of travel, how to navigate it for us who are now in our senior years, and it's our time to be able to go and do the things that we've always wanted to do, that bucket list trip, that cruise, that family outing. And for those of you who don't have all of those things, but you still got that drive and you still want to go, we've got that solo traveling. There are senior groups that you can travel with or learn more about. And it's just a wonderful world out there that some of us have seen and some of us have not seen. And what I plan to do in this course is to have some feedback back and forth of what we can do to help you, to get you where you want to go or what you want to do, only with yourself, your friends, your family, your children, your grandchildren, however you want to travel. There is help out there, mostly on the internet, and myself, on how you can get to where you want to go and how you want to get there and how you want to see it. This is my first time getting up to speak and to doing this with SCANS, and I hope that you will all enjoy coming to my class. And one of the things that always sticks in my mind is I don't want to be afraid to spend my money on travel. What I'm afraid of is growing old and realizing that the only place I went was to work. So I think that struck hard with me. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta work, but I'm gonna travel. I wanna see. And what I want to see is different cultures, I'm born in Canada. I was born in Halifax. I know what Halifax looks like. But my first adventure outside of Canada, I was 33 years old and I went to Cuba. And I was in awe of what I saw, because people don't live everywhere like we live. So it was kind of neat to get that perspective, and it was just, then it became an addiction. It was like, well, if this is what it's like in Cuba, what's it like somewhere else? So me personally, I've done 34 different countries, some of them multiple times in about 23 years. So it excites me And I want to hear back from you on what excites you and what you want to do. I will be going over some of the educational components of travel, of what you can get from it. And it doesn't have to be educational if you don't want it to be. You can sit back and enjoy the sunshine and palm trees and listen to the waves and the wind blow through some palm trees and not have to make decisions for the day if you don't want to. That your biggest decision could be, where am I going to go, the beach or the pool? Or where am I going to go for dinner? Am I going to go to this restaurant or this restaurant? Or am I going to just sit in my room and have room service? There are so many options and choices out there for you. We will also talk about the trends. So our trends a lot in our senior years, believe it or not, has been a lot of solo. More and more people are looking to travel, but either they don't have a spouse or a friend that wants to travel, or they don't have the funds to travel, or their spouse doesn't want to travel with them, but they don't have an avenue of how can I go and see the world and not do it all by myself. So there's a big trend out there. It's one of the things, as I am also a travel agent, and it's one of the things that we are engulfing in on almost on a daily basis of how can we get more people to see the world. So that's one of the things. River cruising, there's train, there's bus, there's ship, there's river, there's ocean. There are so many ways to see wherever it is you want to see, and I would like to help you get to where you want to see, and giving you the tools to do that. So that would be checking out the internet, doing some history of where you want to go and why you want to go there, and then you can, from there, put out a plan and make a good plan. It's not something that you want to spend all your time doing, but you want to spend some time researching and knowing where you want to go and how you want to get there. So I hope I will see you all in my course. It's a Zoom, and it's for 3 weeks. And if there's anything else that I can help you with, be sure of that. And the other thing that I have that's actually on my phone, and it says, it's a reminder to myself, is that your money will return, but your time won't. So it's up to you to make sure that you do what you want to do while you can. Okay? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. The title, oh, there it is, the title. If the universe is full of life, where is everyone? This isn't my question, just so you know. I didn't pose this question. A very famous physicist did. And how that happened was, in 1950, there was an incredible rash of garbage can thefts in New York City. Because who doesn't want a city garbage can in their kitchen? The city had no explanation for who was stealing all the garbage cans. And a cartoon appeared in the New Yorker magazine showing spaceships in Central Park, and all the aliens were stealing the garbage cans. So 4 physicists happened to be having lunch at that time. This is serious. I'm not making this part up. 4 physicists, one of which was Dr. Enrico Fermi. Dr. Fermi, he designed the atomic bombs. Not a great thing to be famous for, but he did. He posed this question. He said, okay, if there's, next slide, please. Sorry, I'm speaking to the slide gods. Fermi said, if there's 200 or 400 billion stars, billion with a B, stars in our galaxy, and there's 2 trillion galaxies, that's a lot of stars. I mean, that star has, this number actually doubled since I made this slide. That's how fast this changes. It's a lot of stars. Now imagine if every one of those stars has one planet around it that's kind of nice. How many of those stars have life? Now, it might only be mold, but how many of those planets have developed a civilization? And so Fermi, this became known as the Fermi paradox. Fermi said, well, where is everybody? How come nobody's calling? We got operators standing by all the time, but nobody's called us. And I'll be very clear, I am not talking about UFOs or aliens or spaceships. I'm going to talk about a scientific approach to answering this simple question of where is everybody? Because Fermi said, these civilizations are probably talking. We should be able to listen. We have something called radio astronomy. Radio astronomers don't look at stars. They listen to the sky. How come we're not hearing anything? Next slide, please. Oh, you can barely see that. But anyways, my approach to this course for 6 weeks is I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to get everyone here to answer the question. If you don't like math, don't panic. If you can do 2 times 3 times 4, you still with me? 2 times 3 times 4? If you get less than 57, you got the right number. If you can go that far with math, you're going to be fine. I won't leave anybody behind. But I'm going to start with, what is life on Earth? The protozoans in the glass of water you're drinking, and the elephants on the savannah, and you, we're all built on the exact same chemicals in some very weird ways that you'll find interesting. We're all built out of the same things on this planet. Another planet, it could be different. But we're going to define, first of all, what life is and what's intelligent life. Is a monarch butterfly smart? For 5 generations, they migrate. Who knows, which one knows when to turn around? One of them does. And they got a brain that's 1/10 of a gram in size. So what is life? Quick question, lower right, that's COVID-19. Is it alive? It's a rhetorical question. We're going to answer it later. But here's a question for one brave person in the audience. Lower left, that's a fossil. It's about 500 million years old. Was that fossil once alive? What are we looking at? Any brave person want to tell me what the fossil is on the lower left? Because this is the way my course is going to be. It's going to be questions and answers. There's not one brave person in this room. There we go, madam. That's a very good question. That's a very good answer, I should say. It's unfortunately extremely wrong. And it was a trick question. I knew someone was going to say plant life. You know why? Because I said it was plant life. I collected these fossils in Ontario. There's millions of them along Lake Ontario. But it isn't. And I'll tell you what it is in a couple of weeks. But that was a perfectly acceptable answer because that's exactly what it looks like. They look like enormous plants, and yet they aren't. So anyways, that's the question we're going to have about life when we look at other planets, like we're looking on Mars. When we find things like that, we're not sure if we're looking at something chemical or something that was alive, if we know what alive is. Is the chair you're sitting on right now, it's not alive. How about the guy that was snoring beside you that's not snoring now? Who knows? Okay, so in week number 2, anyways, in week 1, we're going to look at the chemical basis. If you don't have a background in chemistry, please don't worry. I won't leave anybody behind. My background is chemistry and astrophysics. I won't leave anybody behind. In week 2, we're going to look at the solar system where we live. In 2020, just 6 years ago, it was announced that we thought we found life in the clouds of Venus, believe it or not. Hasn't been confirmed. And that picture at the top right, which you can barely see, out at Saturn, the planet with the rings, its largest moon, Titan, it rains on Titan every day. That's actually a picture of a sea. It's hundreds of miles across because it's raining all the time in Titan. It's not raining water, it's raining methane. Methane is what we're built out of, carbon and hydrogen. So that's very exciting to see that these things exist right here in this solar system. In week 3, we're going to move along to, are there other solar systems? Only 30 years ago, the answer to that was no. Now there's 4,000 other solar systems with 6,000 other planets. So this field is changing very rapidly in our lifetime. And can we have the next slide, please? And then we'll ask the question of, well, is every star, remember that huge number on the first slide, all those stars, are they all suitable? I mean, our star is kind of atypical. There's much bigger stars and there's much smaller stars. Which ones could produce life? Because some of them are not stable, like the people in the room. You never know. When you have a population, you have a big cross-section of people, you have a big cross-section of stars. I didn't mean to insult anybody with that. Sometimes my mouth is moving way faster than my brain. But are all stars suitable? Now, this is where the rubber is going to hit the road. In week 5, a guy named Frank Drake in 1961 tried to answer the Fermi paradox. He came up with a mathematical formula, and if you don't like math, it doesn't matter. I'll walk you through it. I'm not going to answer the question. My goal is to get everyone in this room to answer the question. And even if 10 of you come in with a notepad and try to work the numbers, we'll get 11 different answers, and it's going to be fun because no one's going to interpret the answer the same way. I guarantee you not 2 people in the room will get the same answer. But I'll also look in week 5 at SETI, S-E-T-I, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It's been running for about 65 years now. Have we heard anything from anybody else in outer space? There's been a few odd results, and we'll look at them because there's some very, very, very interesting results, but nothing's been confirmed. And then in week 6, we'll change gears slightly the other way. Well, can we send a message out to them? And you might be surprised that we have done that several times. And a lot of scientists, like Professor Hawking and the Astronomer Royal of Britain, said, absolutely not. Do not send those messages out. Because think of Earth's history. Anytime an technologically advanced society meets a technologically inferior society, how does it work out for the inferior society? It never ended well. And so here we are broadcasting, hey, come on down. We got water, we got air, we're easily digestible, so come on down. And so that mathematical formula on the bottom left, that's the Drake equation. It's simply multiplication. It's not scary, and we're going to walk through it. I guarantee we'll have fun with it. But there is a problem with us trying to go to them. You see the picture on the left? Space has this weird thing of bending. It's not what we think it is. Space and time are not two different things. It's one thing. It's called space-time. Albert Einstein came up with this idea. I didn't think of it this afternoon. But it's very difficult for us to travel over big differences without affecting space, and this has been proven. And last but not least, the golden record there has been sent out on spacecrafts, spaceships, whatever. It's been sent out. It's a message to aliens. There's pictures and there's sounds of Earth on that spacecraft. And everyone in this room, I guarantee, can look at that picture on that space disc there, and you'll know how to build a record player, because that's what that is. I'm not kidding. I can't even make this silliness up. The scratches in that record show you how to build the record player to listen to that record. And as my daughter said, if you put me on an island for the rest of my life with a pile of parts, I'm still not going to build a record player. But an alien is supposed to sort that out so that he can hear sounds and see pictures of Earth. So that's what the course is going to be about. If you're afraid of chemistry or afraid of math, don't be. I guarantee we'll have some fun with it. We're going to have more questions like the fake plant picture there. And I'll explain, actually I'll bring one of those in so people can actually see it at the break in week 1 of why it looks like a plant, but it isn't. And the answer is even more complicated than you might think. So I'm not trying to send you out, ma'am. I was hoping somebody was going to say it's a living plant thing, because that's what I guessed at first when I first started seeing these things. Thanks for everybody's time. Hope to see you there.
That's a very hard act to follow. Angus Smith has talked for us before on the Middle East, and he's developed a strong interest in the topic. And he has also helped us come to a better understanding of what's happening today. While the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire seems to be holding, at least for now, the situation remains volatile. Neither side appears willing to budge on fundamental issues, and the future of the ambitious 20-point American peace plan is, at best, uncertain. Conflict continues in Syria, and the long-anticipated war with Iran is now reality. Meanwhile, non-state actors, including resurgent Islamic State, actively seek tactical and strategic opportunity. It is one of the truisms of intelligent work that intelligent officers and analysts cannot make predictions. All they can do is build context. This course will build some context by looking at what currently are the 3 critical centers of conflict in the Middle East. Anybody name those? Iran? Yeah. Gaza, I think we've hit them all there, and Syria. We will consider how historical and political trauma has shaped outcomes on all sides, and how continuing transitions and the ulterior motives of various actors hinder any attempt to find solutions. We will think about the problem of popular uprising and internal resistance, and why this is so difficult in the Middle East, and indeed anywhere. And we will look at how extremism, its relationship to power, and its tendency to provoke and maintain instability is a major factor in all of these conflicts and in the future of the region. This course will be a follow-up to one that Angus has done in 2024 on Whose Promised Land, Understanding the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. That said, it's by no means necessary to have taken the course to enjoy and benefit from this one.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I don't have any slides, just the nice AI representation you have there. My name is Dave Hoskin. I'm going to this will be my first scans course, and it'll be on a topic that I spent a large part of my life researching, and that's cancer. I suspect cancer has touched everyone in this room, given that there's a 1 in 3 likelihood of someone developing cancer over the course of their lifetime. And the disease has fascinated me for many years. I was a science nerd as a kid. I sold greeting cards so that I could buy buy a microscope. So while other kids were playing hockey and baseball, I was sitting in a basement laboratory I had with my microscope and a bunch of hand-me-down equipment that my uncle had gifted me from, it was throwaway equipment from the National Research Council lab that he worked in. So I've been a science nerd for a long time, and when I went to school and university, I became very interested in biology, and that led me to cancer. So I spent about 40 years researching cancer. My background is a PhD. I'm not an MD, although I collaborated and worked with a number of physicians, oncologists, and surgeons during the time I was at Dalhousie University. And I'm still involved in academia at Dalhousie, although I retired 5 years ago. So I'm going to give this course over 3 sessions. And the first session, I'm going to try to answer the question, what is cancer? And the strategy I'm going to take is to try to put cancer into a historical context. So the first session, I'll talk about what ancient physicians thought cancer was. Hippocrates and Galen, Greek and Roman physicians from before the Christian era, even. And then I'll move into what we now understand cancer being what it is, what are the hallmarks of cancer as we now understand it. And I'll also talk a bit about cancer in the paleontological and archaeological record. So cancer is an old disease. It's not a disease of modern technology. Dinosaurs had cancer. There's the Egyptian mummies that show evidence of having had bone cancer. So there's a lot of interesting historical perspective to have a look at. And then I'll talk about what causes, and this is the second session, will be what causes cancer and how can we prevent or at least decrease the likelihood of developing cancer. So there's a lot of interesting history there. We know now that some chemicals can cause cancer. Well, the first clues for that came from chimney sweeps, who developed a form of cancer it was noted in England in the 17 and 1800s. And chemotherapy. Chemicals cause cancer. Chemicals can also be used to treat cancer. And you might be surprised to know that one of the big advances that led to chemotherapy actually came from a German air raid on an Italian port in the Second World War. So I'll talk about how some of those historical antecedents have led to cancer. Then I'll talk about the genetic basis for cancer. Okay? And then in the last session, I'll talk about the current treatments of cancer, going from the very first treatment, which was surgery, not something you wanted pre-anesthesia, but that's, basically you got a strap of leather to clench in your teeth during surgeries. But there's in medical literature and even archaeological records, it's obvious that surgery was used by ancient Egyptians, for example, to treat cancer. Although if the tumor was not readily accessible, so a skin tumor or something obvious, the physicians at the time said just leave it alone. Okay, but then I'll talk about chemotherapy, directed radiation therapy, and then the newest therapy on the block, and perhaps the most exciting and with the greatest possibilities, immunotherapy. So harnessing the body's immune system to treat this intractable disease. And I think we're making a lot of progress in the area. We're moving towards cancer being more of a chronic disease, something you live with, like diabetes or heart disease, that's treatable and allows a more or less normal life. And what I hope to do, particularly in the context of immunotherapy, is talk a bit about some of the advances that are taking place in Halifax. Some of my colleagues are past colleagues, but people I'm still in touch with, are doing some very exciting work in cancer treatment, mainly from the point of view of immune-based therapies or directed therapies, very, very precise. It's called precision medicine. So the idea is that you focus on the cancer and not on, without harming other healthy tissues. So in a nutshell, that's what I'm going to cover over the 3 sessions. And I hope at the end of it, I will have demystified the disease and maybe even given some reason for hope. Thank you.
Hi. I don't know if anybody else shares my bizarre hobby of planning my own funeral. Like just this morning, I was thinking, maybe I should have Neil Young's Rocking in the Free World as the recessional, and then it would replace Led Zeppelin's All of My Love. So which message do I want to send? The keep rocking in the free world or all of my love? It's a tough choice. Why am I trying to control how others mourn for me? Would be another question you could ask about that. Well, this has been a scholarly project of mine to think about mourning and grief. And I suppose it really started with I'm a word person, I'm a literature professor, and I was stunned by the poverty of words that always comes over me in the face of loss and the mourning of others and the inexpressibility of grief. I don't know how many of you have struggled to write a sympathy card. It is really a difficult task. We have no words for it, and yet I think if you're like me, you felt an intense gratitude for every card and line that you got in the case of losing people who are important to you. So what words do I want to give to people as I exit this world? Well, this caused me to my research area is Middle English literature, and I will be talking a bit about why that's a concern. But I turn to the people who do have the words, who are chiefly poets and artists, and that's what this course is going to be about. So I've called it Grief and Mourning. Roughly, I'm thinking of this as mourning as dealing with cultural practices of the departure of the dead, and grief to me is more on the subjective experience of what it is like to mourn for somebody, why we do it. So on the cultural practices, I think I've said in my initial blurb that the burial of the dead is often held to be the first sign of culture. That is, if you find corpses that have been interred in some way or another, then it's a sign that you're dealing with people who had a culture, even in advance of any other trace of this. I'm going to talk about mourning practices. I'm going to do a little poaching on the fields of anthropology in particular. and some of the strange practices that grow up around grief, or perhaps not so strange, such as, the very common notion of a second burial, a first burial and then a second burial, to lay the troublesome ghosts of those who've departed, self-mutilation, on and on it goes. There'll be some considerations of history, the arcane and elaborate mourning practices of the Victorians may be contrasted with the absence of mourning practices in the modern era, right? We can't tell by anybody's clothes or deportment whether they have been recently bereaved. And this is sometimes really painful if you're out in the world without anybody knowing that you've just lost your nearest and dearest. We're going to be looking at monuments and art. A great number of significant global monuments are actually tombs. The Taj Mahal, the original mausoleum, the Albert Memorial, and every cenotaph that we have. So that we've got this cultural work of memorialization going on, which is a sort of cultural mourning. I want to look at the German artist Käthe Kollwitz, whose amazing sculptures in her reaction to the First World War, her drawings and sculptures of the grieving parents of everyone who had died. On the other hand, on the grief front, I want to look into some of the psychology of this. I have been very influenced by Freud's seminal essay, Mourning and Melancholy, where he asks this strange question, which is, why is mourning so painful? This seems sort of duh, but on the other hand, why is it so painful? What is the mechanism? How do we process our grief? Are we doing something with it? I also consider theories, for example, of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, how we deal with the experience of grief, which is isolating and sort of deadening, I guess we would say. And it's there I turn to the poets. So there will be some poetry reading. I will have some readings, and they'll be posted, and I try and keep them very short, and mainly I'm trying to do readings that people can look at on the board and understand what I'm talking about. For example, one of the longest would be Shelley's, rabble-rousing account of the death of John Keats in the poem Adonais. That's would be one of the longer ones. I'm also interested in couples. So I like to consider Ted Hughes' birthday poems, which he wrote, according to him, on the anniversary of Sylvia Plath's death every year. This is an amazing book. And I also probably plan to consider Courtney Love's songs about the death of Kurt Cobain. Yeah. And it may be that I want to talk about Andrew Halloran's novel Grief, Most Brilliant. But I do know that I'm starting with about half of Book 24 of the Iliad, which is Priam going to the tent of Achilles to ask for the body of his son Hector. I hope to see some of you. Thank you.
Well, I'm obviously not Hugh Williamson, but he's not able to be with us today. But I want to say that I think I'm well qualified to talk about his courses because way back 10 or so years ago, I took 3 spy school courses. So I think I'm doing post-grad this time. So that's great. And I do have a chronic condition, which is macular degeneration. So I can't read, but fantastically, I have a good memory. So that's good. And this thing where I can stretch things out really helps. Hugh is going to do sort of an update on the whole, what he calls the great game of world intelligence, and it's how it affects us in our everyday lives. And it's getting more and more important because we know that everybody knows everything about us now because of our internets and AI and all those things. So he's going to talk about that, how all this world intelligence and how it's dealt with affects us politically. That happens as well with election interference, other countries interfering with our affairs. So he'll be talking about those things and how right now all the international communities have their own intelligence services. And he does talk about what they are and how intelligence is gathered worldwide and how it's interpreted and how it's used. But it's not only used by governments, it's used by private industry, as we know. It's also used by AI, and so he'll go through those things. And he's also going to talk about, I guess, it says here, he's going to talk about some of the fictional characters who are gathering intelligence and have. So he'll be looking at blogs and books and fictional stories about the spies of the past. So his main intention, though, is to help us prepare ourselves for the all-time scrutiny of who's looking at us. Big Brother is watching us, and we don't know who he is. So it sounds wonderful, and I know he'll do an excellent job. It's an excellent course. The reason I started being involved with scans over 10 years ago was because of Spy School. So come on down and join it. Thank you.
Yes, that's me. Hi, I'm Ted Blackburn, and I'm going to be delivering a course on jazz in Canada. And notice by the way, I figured since I'm the last speaker today, I could go a little bit over time. So I won't be more than an hour, so kidding. Yes, this is the fourth course I've done for scans, and I recognize many of you who have taken some of those courses before. And I hope you'll join me again. This is a different approach this time. A number of years ago, I started thinking about designing a course on jazz musicians in Canada, and it kind of I got busy with other things and put on the back burner. And then there's this guy south of the border who started making noises about Canada becoming the 51st state. And I thought, maybe now's a good time to focus on jazz in Canada. So I've put this course together, and if you look at some of the photos, I know they're kind of small, but if you look at the photos in that picture, you might recognize a few people. I mean, there's Oscar Peterson. You probably recognize Oscar Peterson. Oliver Jones, maybe. Perhaps Phil Nimmons. There's a few others. But there's a lot of them up there you probably think, I've never seen those people before, and I don't really know their music. But what's amazing is there's a lot of incredible jazz that has come out of Canada and is currently coming out of Canada. And it's worth taking a look at those people and seeing what they're up to. Okay, you can flip to the next one, Bill. Yeah. So in this course, we're going to be looking at a little bit of the history of jazz, but not too much, just to give a background of where it's all coming from. So the beginnings of it in New Orleans, and how this music moved from New Orleans throughout the rest of the United States, into Canada, and throughout the world. And as I say, there's a lot of amazing music that you may not have heard about. We're going to look at the great migration that happened from the southern United States to the north, and how that affected the spread of music, specifically jazz in this case. We'll look at the role of radio, because jazz grew up with radio, or radio grew up with jazz, and with the recording industry as well. And without radio and the recording industry, the spread of this music and a lot of other music would have taken a lot longer, would have been a lot more difficult. So jazz came along at the time of the development of radio and recording, and we'll look at the influence of those things. And we're going to look at a lot of different musicians, and you can see some of the names up there, just some of the names that we'll be looking at. And as I say, you'll probably recognize a couple of those, but do you know Lorraine Desmarais? Do you know Alison Young? Do you know Mart Kenny, Jody Prosnick? These are all great musicians who are producing wonderful music, and a lot of people don't know about them. So I think you'll find that there's some really wonderful jazz that has happened in Canada and continues to happen in Canada. And as usual, I will be bringing some of my musical friends to the course as well. Yeah, they like my musical friends better than me, but that's okay. And we'll be focusing on, I've put together a set list of music that's been composed by Canadians. So we're going to do all Canadian music in our musical presentation for you. And the last thing is we will be taking a bit of an anthropological approach. And Bill, you can go to the last slide here. And I don't know if you can read that very well. But yes, a little bit of Gary Larson there. But I hope you will join us. It's a lot of fun. We'll be doing a lot of listening and some viewing of video clips of musicians. And as I say, there's a lot of amazing music out there, both from past and present, that I think you'll enjoy. So I hope you can join us. Thank you.
Oh. So I've been watching everyone use the microphone. I think if I stand here, you can hear me? Thank you. So hello again. I know I'm the only thing standing between you and refreshments, so I'll be really brief. First, registration for these fabulous courses opened today and will remain open until Wednesday, March 25th. And I know, having seen our instructors give a synopsis of their courses, that there will be a gold rush to registration, so you may want to register sooner rather than later. And thank you, instructors, for all of your presentations. Second, I wish to recognize John Robideau for his infectious energy and hard work as class manager coordinator. John is stepping back from scans for a while, but he will be not strong-arming, but recruiting volunteers at the reception later. Third, as you can see, Kit and her faculty committee have worked very hard to bring you an excellent lineup of courses for spring, so please join me in thanking them. Finally, we now have the first event in the sanctuary under our belts, and I'd like to thank Hope Church for allowing us to use this beautiful facility, and thank Connor and his team and from Hope Church, and Bill from our tech team for their wonderful tech support today, and they're up in the back overlooking us. We are interested in your feedback about this move to a larger space for the information session. So Bill has developed an online evaluation for us. If you look at your agenda, in the top right-hand corner is a QR code. And they tell me all you have to do is point your phone at the QR code with the camera open and press the yellow button, at least it's yellow on my phone, that shows up to open the link, and then you just answer 3 or 4 questions online. They are collected by Bill, and then we'll do an analysis. If you need help with this, please ask me or any of the tech team, or John, maybe? Sure. I have a few printed copies of the form if you prefer to do it manually. All right, that's it for me. Join us down in Hope Hall for refreshments, provided by Marg Meldrum and Meg Campbell. You don't need to go outside, so go back out the door you came in, go towards the exit door, down one set of stairs. On that landing, don't go outside, turn left and go down the stairs, and you will come out by the stage in Hope Hall. And Meg and Mark have set out a beautiful spread of treats for us. Thank you, everyone.
pull the wings off every fly. I'm gonna murder every flea. I'll be the meanest man in town till you're nice to me. I'm gonna tie a can on every pup that I see looking at a tree. I'll be the meanest man in town till you're nice to me. And listen furthermore, don't get sore whenever we may meet. Why, sure as you're born on your pet corn, I'm gonna plant my feet. I'm gonna go around the neighborhood and frighten all the kids I see. I'll be the meanest man in town till you're nice to me.
Say you're mean, all right.
So rare, you're like the fragrance of blossoms fair, sweet as a breath of air, fresh with the morning dew. So rare, you're like the sparkle of old champagne, orchids in cellophane, couldn't compare with you. You are perfection, you're my idea of angels singing the Ave Maria. For you're an angel, I breathe and live you with every beat of the heart that I give you. So rare, this is a heaven on earth we share, caring the way we care. Ours is a love so rare.
To blame if little raindrops fall. It was raining when you said goodbye. Now that you've gone away, every day is a rainy day. Finders, keepers, some lucky someone knows. I've learned it's bluebirds, weepers. Someone found you, I lost you, well, that's how it goes. Oh, I'm not crying, what good would it do? But when I think of you, there's rain in my eyes.
when I get back to Calgary. Don't say no, sirree, I'm off to Calgary. Oh, what a time there's gonna be in that rompin', stompin', stampede town.
Once I get back to Calgary, you'll have to carry me out of Calgary. You've never seen the